I was just watching Tucker Carlson's recent interview with Matt Taibbi, and I grew up as a kid uh, or youth watching his father. I can't remember his name now. I'm 56. I guess I'm their age, so getting old. And it's been, I don't know how many, 35 years since I was living in New York. So, excuse me. I just cooked breakfast. It's a little polluted in here. I have the air purifier running and the window open. Anyway, so a couple of things just wanted to comment on, I guess. Taibbi and Carlson were commenting that, they grew up in the age of Schoolhouse Rock, the 70s, and, that was probably an intelligence operation. And, they believed in, America and democracy, or democracy. The church committee was at that time. And then what was the other comment? There was some other aspect of it all. Well, just, touch on that. And I guess, the collective presidency, like they can't believe all these crazy things are going on. But I guess my comment would be, well, my childhood and growing up, my, I guess, youth, was spent around, my crazy, in the end, malicious mother, who was a founding member of the second wave of the feminist movement, Joanne Kantrowitz, and she sued Kent State University for gender discrimination, quite blatant, and, these scum, in a real country, we would have shot the parties involved, Martin Nermi, or, who's the other one, the one who blacklisted her, Carl Stanley Carl, whatever his name was. He was with, like, Yale or something, and, malicious, conniving academic piece of shit. And, you want to talk about sexism. My mother, and by extension our family, went through it, from about 1973 and before until about, when her career in academia decisively ended, probably 1983, 85. And excuse me. So, all of you, I'm with her, Hillary, feminists can suck it. I mean, it's just, the level of, nasty dishonesty on your part is just, like I said about, Carl Nermi and Stanley Carl, or whatever the fuck their names were. They're dead now, I'm sure, but they should have been shot. And, if there's a revolution, you'll go to the gulag if you're lucky. Me Too, fucking phony, bourgeois swine. Excuse me. But, God, I mean, just to think of my fucking life and my childhood, like all the twists and turns and absurdities and insanity, from 1973, when I was 5 years old, I think that was my first awareness, as a human being, as a little child, and, just kind of coming to awareness, when my mother's life was being, crushed, and living in Kent, Ohio. Parents taught at Kent State University in the aftermath of the shootings of those 13 students. Excuse me. And growing up, around the Banderovci and, just all sorts of filthy reactionaries there. It's, as an associate of mine once said, to grow up in America is a form of child abuse, with cockroaches who tolerate, the worst social practices, of any, halfway civilized country in the world. So anyway, so I never had, like Schoolhouse Rock, this is how a law, bill becomes a law. Um, I don't think I really had that many illusions in the USA, because of my family's experience. It was a brutal fight with Kent State University growing up. Um, for those of people who don't know what the fuck I'm talking about, for example, excuse me, um, uh, my mother sued the university with Shirley Graham, who's a botanist, and the fucking university sent in goons to wreck her lab. And then they tried to destroy my parents' marriage. And then they tried, the lawyer for my mother, I don't know how she got the lawyer, but he then threatened to like freeze my parents' bank account, get them thrown out on the street, when basically the university, and Reagan, when he got in office, just, threw the case in the trash after, almost 10 years of litigation, onto the federal level. And, yeah, so, what else can I say? So it was like I was ecstatic when Reagan got shot. I was like so happy. The son of a bitch, I was hoping he'd really suffer and then die, but unfortunately he didn't. So yeah, suck on it, Hillary Clinton bourgeois feminists. Yeah, you're not a fake, you're a real feminist. You're bourgeois, you're scum, and I guess that's the other part is, fucking liberals, shit libs, and the MSNBC peanut gallery that Biden issued all these pardons for, in part, as Taibbi and Carlson talk about. People like that, they're cockroaches, as far as I'm concerned. They're gulag bait. So, but what else? So, believing in America, I guess after 91, my hope was I could leave the country and, make a life elsewhere, I guess, or work at some corporation, for whatever it might have been. I was thinking then 30 years, retire with a pension. But after 91, all of that was practically destroyed. The capitalists had no need for, these kinds of, people in those positions. Well, I guess they started the NGO racket then. Yeah. So if you were a colonial, foot soldier, you'd go work for some USAID connected NGO, and I was offered that. And also, my father spoke of, why don't you become a researcher for the Council on Foreign Relations? Why don't you go work for the AFL-CIA International Department? And I met communists, anarchists, leftists in Japan. That was my focus, and looked at Japanese history, and also the other thing was I grew up with the genocide of the paternal family. They were Belaruski Jews, and they were all wiped out. And in the end, that was capitalism. The capitalists of the West expanded, imperialism, and the petty bourgeoisie, the NGO, right-thinking liberal fucksticks, decided to first colonize places like India, and also before that starve Ireland, and then they went on to back the Nazis. So that's why I say in Europe and America, 15 million need to be shot. They're Nazi collaborators. How many millions? I think Ernest Mandel said every 6 years, 60 million children die of starvation and preventable diseases. And this was around 91, so maybe those figures are probably outdated. But you'd also have to. So there's a rise in level of wealth. Many of these countries got the scab on at least the American working class, also the Western European working class, who basically failed in their historical mission to overthrow capitalism. So what can you say there? But still, so there was a rise in level of wealth in the rest of the world, but at the same time, upwards of 15 million murdered in the former Soviet Union. Three-quarters of the industry here just utterly destroyed by external and internal traders. Jeffrey Sachs, Chubais. That's why Jews are more and more hated. Some of it's anti-Semitism, of course, and peasant, petty bourgeois stupidity. Just fucking idiots, who can't come to grips with it's their beloved capitalist system, which has failed them because they're petty bourgeois fucking pieces of shit. But the other part of that is Jews had outsized abilities, within the societies where they lived. And in the end, as, the Soviet Union and now the USA and the West degenerated, they used a portion of them, like Chubais or Sachs or others, used those abilities to attack their own societies and to enrich themselves. But at any rate, what was my point? I mean, basically, all of the people murdered. Yeah, like basically, I grew up in the wake of, the genocides and COINTELPRO. I mean, I was around Stalinists. And, Westpac, ex-members of the Communist Party USA or far-left liberals, radicals. And, part of that, that was the weird thing for me. The weird thing for me wasn't Schoolhouse Rock and Phil Donahue and Marlo Thomas and the beautiful liberalism of the 70s, because I never believed in that bullshit. They threw cold water on me when I was 5 years old. And for 10 years until I was 15, I just witnessed up close and personal, the worst of, the assault on basically the feminist movement and also the student movement. So I never had any illusions in the vicious, murderous nature of the U.S. state. I grew up hearing about the Church Committee and, the CIA were the bad guys, which they were and are. But, the crazy thing for me was, like, in the last 15 years maybe, or 30, all of a sudden, people, my parents, other family members, they were supposed to be the supposed, at least liberal good guys or far left liberal, social democratic good guys. But all of a sudden, they started getting themselves involved in skullduggery and in former Yugoslavia or, former Soviet Central Asia, and talking all this shit about, it was all Stalin's fault, and, that's why, so I'm over here doing God knows what in these places on behalf of the basically the U.S. government, Clinton and friends. And, another cousin, he was nominated for a Nobel Peace Prize. Barnea, he wrote a column for Yediot Aharonot. He was the head of the educational section of the Histadrut, which was the Zionist Labor Federation. It's basically like if the Klan had a labor federation, and he would have been the educational guy for the Klan's labor federation. That's what the Histadrut is. Well, Bill Clinton and Jeffrey Epstein, I guess, and all those people, they had created this illusion in the 90s of, we are, the indispensable nation, as, the other, sociopath Albright put it. They learned all the wrong lessons, or they they've learned everything and nothing. Someone once said about the French aristocracy, and that was sort of the bloom, the tubercular period of the U.S. empire was the the most the apogee, the most powerful point in history for the U.S. empire. The Soviet Union had been destroyed. The worker states had been destroyed. The U.S. could do whatever the fuck it wanted, but it had these mediocrities and these, outright sociopaths at the helm. They just destroyed, everything. That was my hope, basically, was as fucked up as the Soviet Union was. It was not inspiring. But at least we had a system, a counter system to, these murderers who had gone in and murdered how many, 3 million, 6 million in Vietnam, Vietnamese, and then, in the end it was like 260,000 American soldiers either got shot, blown up, or killed themselves. Like 200,000 killed themselves, 60,000 almost were killed in the war. Like Star Wars in 1976, I'm 8 years old. That comes out, and there's an allegory of the Vietnamese victory and over the empire, the Washington. But all of a sudden, what was it? 10, 14 years later, freedom has broken out all over the world. Well, it's really like that movie. There's two movies I get confused: Basic Instinct and Fatal Attraction. No, I think it's Basic Instinct. Yeah, Basic Instinct with Sharon Stone and the other guy, the son of Kirk Douglas, Michael Douglas, I guess. See, I never paid attention to much after 1991 because it was all a sick fraud. And now, I get a lot of satisfaction from watching these phonies and sociopaths exposed and denounced and hopefully killed in the future. I don't care if Fauci's 81. I mean, they put Nazis on trial when they were like 99 years old. So he's got another 18 years of life left in his miserable existence. So put him on trial, and put all, at least grill him, publicly and expose him for the fucking murderous gnome that he is. But, in terms of, any illusions, I never grew up with those illusions, thanks to Kent State University, Yale University, Ronald Reagan, the church committee. It was abusive, to put a 5-year-old, up until the age of 15 through all of that. And, my life bucket list is to shoot 10,000 of these kind of reptiles, these, sociopath fucking torturers, They're, you can call me a criminal, but no, I mean, it's like the fucking retards over here calling Kalinin and the Bolsheviks bandits. They're traitors. If you think that a revolutionary who's going to shoot the torturers and murderers like Madeleine Albright or Fauci or the other fucking filth, if you think that person is a criminal, well, you watch MSNBC then. But I think, like Luigi Manzioni showed, the vast majority of the country, fucking hates the guts of your, supposed heroes. Any rate, I know that's kind of like not laser focused and, but Jesus, my life, I'm 56 now, so for 51 years, it's just been insanity. And, to kind of like put that all together, and I've, the other thing is I've come in contact with, these fucking liberals. I had an associate who ran as Green Party for Rahm Emanuel's old seat in Chicago, and then alderman, and all these fucking liberals, supposedly anti-war liberals, pro-Palestine, what do they call them? Synthetic left, or, whatever, the loyal left, CIA faction, supporting Palestine. They just did nothing but slander and smear him. And yeah, same thing for me, character assassination. Hazeldian of the American Communist Party rightly pointed that out. I like that when he spoke out about that. Some fucking spook whore trying to character assassinate him. I mean, I had that in my life. And yeah, and then kind of moving forward, my experiences, I was a Shackman hire with the city of Chicago. I have wanted no part of, this kind of NGO USAID. I was offered that on a platter, basically. I could have gone to work for the U.S. government, as a researcher, as an operative, a spook, but no, my upbringing, thankfully, I grew up around Stalinists and radicals, and enough that I knew these people were fucking filth. Even my parents, they were Bernie Sanders CIA socialists. And, I basically I hate them, and they hated me in the end because I refused to cooperate. But I had no illusions. But anyway, so did go to work, in the end, I was like, fuck it, let me get my commercial driver's license. I'll work an honest job. I'll drive a truck, fuck all of you. I commit class suicide. I want no part of you. Maybe I'll kill a scab, and maybe I can actually organize something in this rat hole fucking, excuse for a fucking country. And nope, ended up getting hired because the FBI raided Chicago, personnel department. Buddy of mine, he'd been a precinct captain for the somewhat dissident wing of the Chicago machine, became Green Party. He was like, hey, why don't you throw your application in? Because basically what happened was the feds came in, they raided the city personnel office, and the city personnel office had been screening applications for, political connections. And basically the way they did it was you put keywords in your cover letter for your application, and then they knew you were, sponsored by the alderman, so then they hired you. And, I never had political sponsorship before then, and as it turns out, my buddy Donnie didn't either. They tried to fire him, for some years when he first started with the city as well. But, he always watched kept his nose clean, watched his ass, did his job, became his business is his business. But, in my case, so they were forced to hire me and a whole bunch of others. They were too scared. They were under threat of arrest then. So I started in late 2006, went on till June 2021. I was illegally fired by this Nazi whore, Jamie Rhee. She fucked Mayor Daley, got her job illegally, and then fired me illegally while I was on disability for heart defect. And as it turns out, I had cancer from, almost certainly the airport. Sucking in jet fumes every day, and, a history of colon cancer in my family. Thankfully, that was found, I caught it early enough. No thanks to Swedish Covenant Hospital, which fucked everything up with these illegal fucking scabs, and then sent some fucking faggot, cocksucker to try to badger me about why didn't I like multiculturalism. I'm like, well, frankly, faggot, we would load your ass on a fucking freight car for being an anti-worker element, you fucking freak, for, hiring illegal scabs and fucking up an at-risk worker's colonoscopy. And, sure enough, that delayed my colonoscopy thanks to this fucking faggot freak and these wetback fucking filth that, these fucking scum at Swedish Covenant Hospital hired to steal more money, cheap labor. Thankfully, I got to call ICE and report Swedish Covenant. Actually, the hotline is so busy now, but there's so many work sites I got to call in on. Anyway, so but then it was 15 years of psychological warfare against these fucking Nazis and rat cockroach filth. It was a rainbow coalition of shit. Uncle Tom's, wetbacks, cartel friends and family, street gang friends and family, mafia, of course, Calabrian mafia, Irish fucking criminal filth. Hey, Dick Durbin, fuck you. Garland Nixon pointed out, that was nice the other day. I was watching the senior senator from each state controls the political machine. So that would be Dick Durbin in Illinois. So a lot of shit I went through is at the feet of Dick Durbin. In the end, that's where the buck stops. But anyway, so city of Chicago. So went through all of that. I mean, on the one hand, it was nice not to be around these conniving, backstabbing, little Eichmann liberals. I'd never want to work at a university or a nonprofit. They're just the slimiest, most hypocritical, treacherous, filth you could ever meet. But, right next to them were these scum in my phony Teamsters local, 726 and 700. Oh, God. And, right. So my whole point is all this weird shit, right? Like, I'm campaigning in my neighborhood. It's Milwaukee and Belmont area. And I run into, like, the cousin of my coworker buddy, Abel. His cousin's the precinct captain for the neighborhood. Cousin sends over these chicas to move in right above me in my building and start blasting music on concert speakers all night long for 2 weeks. And, I had my shotgun on me, and it was a provocation. They were trying to see if I'd go up there with my shotgun, blow the lock off the door, kick the door in, and, start beating them. Or, if I had to shoot them. But, my plan wasn't, I was and am a communist, and, unfortunately, we don't practice direct violence, very, that often. So, and I was looking just to get a pension and get the fuck out, but I should have just gotten the fuck out of the city. At any rate, so, called the cops, called the landlord, little effect. The cops came by once or twice, banged on the door, made the rats scurry once or twice. Finally, they fucked off. Gigi upstairs on the third floor told the head chica, "You wake up my baby again, I'll put you in the hospital." Her husband was a drug dealer. So there was that. And then there was this other fucking piece of shit, Chris Rankin, super Uncle Tom. I tried to be, nice to him. He comes by my house in Jefferson Park. We go out to the gun range. I take him out for an afternoon at the gun range. We're talking about, revolver, semi-auto. We rent the 44 Magnum Alaskan Ruger. I have fun shooting that down, 20 yards down the range. He's a little afraid of it. Well, it's got a lot of recoil, but, that's my family. Indian country bears, big bore. Then we go out to dinner and, we're talking, and then he tries to race bait me afterwards. I'm like, well, whatever I said, it was like, well, Chicago's a circus, rainbow coalition of shit. You got, collaborators from all corners of life, and including black ones. He was black. And, he tried to race bait me after that. And then he tried to race bait me again. And he's like, oh, have you ever said, the N word? And I'm like, oh, I guess so, but didn't really think about it. Grew up as a super liberal and a communist. But, I'm not a fucking liberal zombie who ignores reality. I'm living in the gutter, forced to live in the gutter, with these filth. So, yeah, I'm not a little fucking shit lib. And then he, tries to get me fired. He's like, oh, he's a racist. Fire him. And Chris Trailer, our phony steward, I guess he intervened with Mark Chasin, our other half-phony steward. And they were like, well, this guy's super liberal. His parents were, saints helping the Negro people in 1960, leading rent strikes against racist real estate companies in Hyde Park. That's how Barack Obama and Michelle Obama got to live in Hyde Park. What the fuck are you talking about? Well, turns out Rankin worked in Durbin's office. Never got the full story there. Did he get fired? And then they gave him a job here. Did he, graduate and leave and become a spy at the airport, against Shachtman hires, federal anti-corruption hires? Who knows for sure, but something like that. And yeah, so he was a little cocksucker for Dick Durbin, the political mobster for Illinois. And what other, hinky shit? There was a scumbag Ron, Jewish, mobster, gay, got the cops called on him because he hired a male hooker, tried to stiff the hooker pulls a knife on him, and but nothing happens because he has clout and he's with the mob. Well, I told Ron after him and this other guy, Jerry, were laughing about how they ripped off people for their vehicles, lying about the condition of their vehicles. I was like, well, I went to Belarus and met this retired teacher, and she was driving this 1983 Ford, whatever, subcompact, and it was in good condition and running because, fucking filth who stole from people got put on a freight car to Siberia, or if they were lucky, Soviet Central Asia back in 1939, 1940. And, no one cared because they were filth. And he got all mad, and then he falsely accused me of being an anti-Jewish terrorist. But, look, you filthy cockroach. You filthy Zionist mafia fucking hooker stiffing cockroach. I'm actually half Jew plus Marano, communist, and we don't carry out spontaneous acts of terror. We left that behind, like in 1870 over here in Russia. We stopped doing that, back 150 years ago, scumbag. But you're a fucking idiot. You know nothing about history. You're just a little cocksucking mafia Zionist piece of shit. And anyway, so he called his buddies, boyfriend and probably the cartel or something, hit and ran on me while I was driving home. Thankfully, I kept my guns in my glove box, locked up in the parking lot at the airport because, I had various run-ins with scumbags where I had to pull a gun. And, that's the Bill of Rights, you fucking filthy cocksuckers. Jamie Ree or Dick Durbin or... you're pathetic fucking roaches. God, I can't wait to fucking shoot you. Now, I'm not going to shoot you until we have a fucking revolution, cockroach. So unfortunately, you're safe now, but, next 10 years, it's going to go very badly for you. If the legal authorities under Pres Don don't fucking get you, someone like me is going to get you, I got years of life left, and yeah, you got it coming. You fucking roaches, all of you, Rankin, Ree, Durbin, fucking filth. So anyway, so he sends his little fucking boyfriend after me, hits and runs on my truck, pull out my gun, I'm like, come here, motherfucker. And, fucking cockroach, wetback piece of shit, backed the fuck off. And then later on, I was in the family car, the Mercury Grand Marquis. He didn't recognize it. I drove right next to him. I looked right at him and got his license plate, got everything. He still hadn't fixed his headlight from hit and running on my truck. And and then this pig, this dirty wetback pig, called me up. He was like, "Hey, there's been a report on you." I'm like, "Okay, wetback, here's my lawyer's number. Here's Jerry Boyle. Fuck you. Go back to Mexico, you fucking roach." And counter-terror police. Then they parked a van outside. Then my fucking Mike, what's his last name? I can't remember. But Mike, my landlord, son kills himself because he's such a miserable, slumlord. Owns 60 units, doesn't fix any of them. Everyone hates him. His son probably killed himself because he had a fucking piece of shit father like that. Well, he brings in some fucking pig, to plant a bug in my apartment, lies, says he's like an insurance inspector, last minute. I'm like, oh, whatever. I should have told him, I didn't know, next time, show me ID, pig. Oh, you're a pig? Fuck you. You want to get violent? Okay, I got my gun. I'll shoot you now. So, but anyway, like just nasty harassment, and all this shit comes, swirling around, coming together. These are fucking criminals, and they deny it. I filed a police report with this Lithuanian state trooper pig. I gave him a description of the vehicle that hit me. He says no description on the report. Huh? Funny, huh? And, so it's all a machine. And Dickie fucking Durbin, the fucking Euro nigger, fucking Irish piece of shit, is on the top of that machine, the political machine. And, he keeps the whole manure contraption running. And, that's how things work. But, for me, that wasn't the most shocking thing. The most shocking thing was, my own fucking parents, the sainted fucking super liberals are actually fucking CIA. I mean, what? All the shit I heard, the Church Committee, Westchester Peace and Action Coalition, people around Kent State University, the radicals, the Stalinists I grew up around, the CIA was just, anathema. But, my father was in the OSS. What the fuck was it? He was a photographer for the Tokyo war crimes trials. Well, how did he get in the army? He had a heart defect. Same with my Uncle George. How did he get in the army? He was a radar operator. It turns out I went to Boca Raton. They had a museum of, the radar training camp at the time, which was, top secret. No notes. Couldn't even, if you said the word radar, you'd be subject to court-martial. And he operated a radar station in the South Pacific during World War II. Later died of stomach cancer. Could have been a loose end they tied up, possibly. Could have been. Or, who knows, just all the airport, toxins he was around. Had another great uncle, he died of cancer from driving a cab, being in a garage full of toxins, I'm sure. And, we're inbred, so predisposition to colon cancer. So what then? But that was my father and my uncle. And my other uncle, Irving, he was great friends with Carlo Gambino, the head of basically the mob, at least from New York, the East Coast to the Mississippi. And so, all of these, creepy, crazy ties. And yeah, these people, they're criminals and they operate like criminals. And as one of my criminal coworkers said, who's a sub-foreman for the laborers when I was driving the coal patch truck in Chicago, don't write anything down. That's evidence. That's how they all work. So, and then, if you talk about what I'm talking about now, they're like, you're crazy. You're racist. Like our friend, our innocent little lamb, Tucker Carlson, the multimillionaire says, shut up, you're racist. So, God. I'm a communist, so I don't engage in individual acts of violence except in self-defense. I'll be happy to shoot you. Give me a reason. There's another incident with fucking Patricia Flynn, that other fucking Irish whore with the Metro Water Reclamation District. She sent some Mexican wetback to fucking, stare at me at a traffic light, try to intimidate me, and I just took out my gun and I was, held it under the window and I was like, show me a gun, you fucking cockroach. I will end your fucking miserable life. But that's my bucket list is, as your manure contraption collapses, as your bourgeois authority starts to fall apart, as the police start to walk away, that's when we start to take out the trash. I'm not going to do it spontaneously, but when it comes down to the final conflict, that time, yeah, and I hope you suffer. Yeah. So anyway, so all that, long-winded circuitous way of saying, my life's been fucked up, but I had no illusions from a very early age. I had some illusions. I thought my parents were decent people, but I don't think they really were, But, out of all the old shit, maybe something can come of this. Maybe, I don't know. I do have faith in the working class, but America's so fucked up. But, Comrade Navarro of the Cuban Communist Party wrote a nice book, and he pointed out, Cuba was fucked up, through genocide, slavery, colonialism. But, Tucker Carlson just pointed out, too, like the USA was founded in rebellion against the fucking British. So, yeah, maybe those of us who are willing to, kill the bastards can make something of America still, as Thomas Paine, put it so many years ago. So.